Hi, I'm Darren and welcome to New Factory Classics. Today we're going to discuss 2000's X-Men. Eric Leshner is being brought into a Nazi internment camp with his family. Unfortunately for him, they're being split up. During that moment though, his mutant abilities kick in and he gains the ability to control metal. He ends up destroying an iron gate trying to get back to his parents, but he is hit in the head with the Nazi's gun and passes out. I hope this doesn't change his view of humanity going forward. Mississippi, the year 2000. Anna Maria and her boyfriend are making plans to go to the great north of Canada after they graduate high school. They share their first kiss, and her mutant abilities kick in where she ends up taking people's life force whenever they touch skin. I guess you could say she sookied the life out of him. Congress is discussing the Mutant Registration Act. This would make all mutants legally be forced to come forward, register who they are, and what abilities they have. This was, of course, in the past before Instagram and TikTok, because every mutant, if they existed now, would be an influencer. Eric, who is now called Magneto, is having a meeting with Professor X. He believes that mutants are the new dominant species and must wipe out all humans. Professor X believes that both humans and mutants can live in harmony. Anna Maria is now called Rogue. She still went to the great north of Canada, but all by herself. And while traveling, she sees a crazed mutant with the ability of shooting claws out of his hands. He's wild, he's strong, and he heals incredibly fast. And if he keeps up this character development, he'll be playing the same person for the next 35 years. His human name is Logan, but his mutant name is Wolverine. He wants to kick Rogue out of his car for sneaking in, but eventually he reveals that he does have a soft side for people. That is, when he's not gutting them with his metal claws. They get randomly attacked by Sabretooth, a giant homeless-looking man who has incredible strength. They're about to die, especially Rogue, who's in a truck that's about to explode, if Storm and Cyclops didn't show up to save them. Storm is a woman that can control storms. It's a very on-the-nose name. Cyclops has 2 eyes, and they shoot lasers out of them, making his abilities more like a Gorgon than a Cyclops. Wolverine wakes up from his attack in an underground bunker where everything has an X on it. He begins to hear voices in his head that are leading him around. He eventually finds an elevator that leads him up to a children's school. My high school also had an underground bunker, but we couldn't come up with a single letter to theme it around. Wolverine gets introduced to the entire X-Men team, and he finds out how evil Magneto is. Plus, we get this classic joke. Professor X takes Wolverine all around the school and explains that all the students there are mutants that have been abandoned by their families. And finally, he takes Wolverine back to the bunker, explaining to them the secret team that lives under the school in order to prepare to fight Magneto. Gandalf is super evil in this film. Senator Kelly is kidnapped by Mystique. They have a really good anti-mutant debate while they're discussing what they should be doing next. She eventually reveals that she herself is a mutant and ends up beating him with her foot, knocking him out. Senator Kelly was never good at reading a room, just anti-mutant legislation and subsidy reform. Jean Grey tests Wolverine to find out that he has adamantite attached to his entire skeleton, something that would kill a normal human, but his healing abilities made him survive the procedure, though it knocked out his memory. Personally, I have unobtainium attached to my skeleton. Magneto uses a machine to give Senator Kelly mutant abilities by hitting him with radiation. What powers will he get? Super speed, flight, strength, or maybe memory loss and motor function loss like a normal senator? Logan and Cyclops start their back and forth for the rest of the movie. They hate each other specifically because Wolverine loves Jean, but Jean is with Cyclops. Logan is having a nightmare that night, and Rogue goes in to wake him up. Unfortunately, he wakes up and impales her with his claws, though she uses her hand to steal his healing abilities so she can get better. But nobody can steal Hugh's love for song and dance. Well, here it is, Senator Kelly's confirmed mutant abilities. He can become Nickelodeon Gak, and he uses that to escape Magneto's clutches and fall into the ocean. Rogue is afraid that all of the other mutants are going to hate her now that they know that she can steal people's powers, so she runs away. Professor X puts on Cerebro, a machine that allows him to amplify his powers, but it also lets him order pizza. Wolverine rushes to find Rogue, and eventually he convinces her to come back to school and give it another chance. Unfortunately for them, Magneto shows up. Now, having metal throughout his body makes him incredibly outmatched by Magneto. He's more outmatched than Macaulay Culkin was versus the bees in My Girl. Magneto kidnaps Rogue and ends up piecing out with her. Though right before he can escape, a bunch of cops show up, though he flips their guns at their heads and gets them to back down. He eventually gets into Senator Kelly's helicopter and flies away. Your tax dollars at work. Senator Kelly shows up at the mansion, and Professor uses his abilities to figure out Magneto's plan. Magneto plans on using his machine to change all the world leaders attending a UN function and making them become mutants. He doesn't want to power the machine himself, though. He wants to make Rogue do it. He'll give her his powers and make her die using the machine. Kind of like in the 1800s when we started to use child labor. Storm, who continues to be in the movie despite her best efforts of melting into the background, has a nice conversation with Senator Kelly about how humans and mutants are scared of each other. The senator dies, though, turning into a giant puddle of water, getting all over her and all over the floor, which is the giant FU to a woman named after a storm, something that gets water all over her and all over the floor. Professor X attempts to use Cerebro to find Rogue, but it was booby-trapped earlier and it almost kills him. Remember, kids, if you're going to use a machine that enhances your psychic abilities, make sure to check it first. Jean Grey fixes Cerebro in under 12 seconds while just unplugging something that had been plugged in to poison the professor. She ends up using the machine herself and figures out that Magneto is going to attack the UN event. Having an event and getting mass poisoned is still a bigger accomplishment than the UN has ever done in real life. Logan joins Storm, Jean Grey, and Cyclops, creating their first X-Men team. It's about one half the size of your standard X-Men team, but they're on their way to Liberty Island. Logan and Mystique get separated and start fighting away from the rest of the group, while Cyclops gets immediately knocked out. Storm and Jean Grey have their hands full with Toad. The entire X-Men team is getting their butts handed to them. But what would you expect from a group that went on a double date to Liberty Island clad in leather? Storm electrocutes Toad, killing him, and the guy who played Darth Maul dies a second time in 2 years. I guess you could say both Magneto and Senator Palpatine did a crap job in training him. Magneto captures all four of them immediately, pinning them to the side of the Statue of Liberty, and pieces out to go make Rogue kill the UN. They're able to escape, and they send Wolverine flying over to destroy the machine, but he is stopped by a weakened Magneto. Their only plan to succeed was to have Cyclops shoot an elderly man in the back, and boy does he, and they destroy the machine. Unfortunately, Rogue seems to have died in the whole experiment, and a crying Wolverine puts his face to her face. She eventually comes back and steals most of his energy, causing him to die himself, just bleeding out and ready for death. Don't worry though, he has 7 more movies to film, and then Logan where he can finally die. And then Disney will force him to come back for Deadpool and Wolverine. The X-Men have saved the day and saved the UN. Wolverine leaves the school to go up north back to Canada to search for answers up for his past. And Rogue enrolls in the school because she no longer wants to be alone. Magneto is locked in a plastic cage, just like our oceans now. The world leaders are saved, thanks to the X-Men. And now I have seen it so you don't have to. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.